All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back live with BrainFood from the Heartland, the Louie Be Free radio show, and my very special guest. I've been talking about him earlier this morning. Elon, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Introduce yourself, Stephen, and tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Louie. So my name is Stephen Leon, and I'm out here in the DC metropolitan area my whole life.
Good morning to you.
And about 10 years ago, I started a company based on intellectual property licensing. And through that research, it's pretty much from that unique perspective, you pretty much realize that everything is intellectual property. All right. So through that, I stumbled upon all kinds of tech, especially that to mitigate climate change. And even within that, all the, I wouldn't say barriers politically, but just the all the moving pieces. People are very much like little, free will, mathematical, calculating kind of creatures. You know what I mean? So that fits into, and there's solutions within that. So basically, what we're looking at here, people want something simple and linear. So when we know that fossil fuels, coal, whether that be, natural gas or what have you, they just want that one replacement. Fossil fuels has taken us thus far. It's a problem. And people just want like that one thing, like, okay, well, solar panels or this or that or that. Yeah. It's actually a collection of things. And it's not that many things. It's like 5. So if you're looking at solar, hydro, wind turbines, thermal, and hydrogen are the key ones. And again, it's not about just, for instance, if you were to take, so the present infrastructure relies 64% of its energy needs from fossil fuels. So let's say you think that solar panels is the ultimate solution. So you spend all this time and energy and manufacturing and production to make all these solar panels in an infrastructure that relies 64% of its fossil fuels. So what you're doing is you're not offsetting anything. You know what I mean? So you're still
okay.
And then of course solar panels have a lifespan of 20 years, but even then, again, from intellectual property, I saw a patent the other day for a quantum dot solar panel. If you can imagine the applications with that, you know what I mean? So, so that's where you get into the thermal stuff. And, and with that includes some advanced nuclear. I know that scares people. People don't fully understand the advancements that have been made with that. I don't want to get too technical, but
and forgive me for interrupting. You're right. It does scare. It does, and maybe it scares people more my age than your age. Well, because of Chernobyl, because of the 3 Mile Island, because of, oh my God, what was now I forget the movie where there was a meltdown. It's an old movie. Oh,
I've seen them all. I know.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. So it does, but you're saying the advances. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let's look at it like this. Do you drink coffee?
I do.
Okay, so in your caffeine, do you take a caffeine pill, energy drink, tea?
I drink tea. I drink some coffee. Yeah.
Right. So you have this is kind of all analogies will break down, mind you, but so within.
Oh, I like that. All analogies break down. Good.
They do.
Yeah.
So let's say within your caffeine pill, that's obviously the caffeine has been isolated from all the other compounds that are within.
Oh, somebody takes a pill. Okay, I got you.
So uranium is very much the same thing. Within uranium, there are all these different isotopes, right? So what we don't want to mess with is U-235. That's the stuff that can sustain a fission reaction, right? So U-238 is more of its natural. So if you take uraninite or uranium ore, right? There's a bunch of stuff in there. There's uranium, of course, maybe some titanium, other trace metals, but mostly it's uraninite. It's classified that for a reason. So, but it's an abundance, like 98 or 99.3%. It's pretty high of U-238. And what they have done, what we as a species has done is taken we've isolated out the U-235 and then just pretty much disregarded all the 238 and just kind of like, it's waste or whatever, and it's just kind of there. And we enrich that, and that stuff is like, in layman's terms, it's super hot. How's that? Right?
Okay.
It's basically just a large. It's like coal on steroids or whatever drug you want to choose, and it just stays hot like that. And then you put it in water, and it boils, creates steam, pushes turbines, et cetera, et cetera. So what they found in recent technologies is like after some time, that 235 starts to decay, and it's no longer useful in the very obsolete nuclear reactors that we've come to know. So here in Virginia, we rely 41% of our energy needs from nuclear, and it's the old stuff. It's the old reactors and things. Yeah. And we're not making any plans to make any new ones. They're looking at microreactors, which is beneficial, and even then, like, I don't like U-235. There's a really cool company out there that Bill Gates started, actually, and they have found a way to take depleted uranium, so spent fuel from these old reactors and from decommissioned weapons that can no longer sustain because they're just old. So they take this depleted uranium and they put it into a traveling wave reactor, and it's able to use all this leftover U-238 that's like sitting in Kentucky and all over the world. And they put them in these reactors, and it burns very slowly, right, like a candle. And it's actually just before the lockdown here, the president over there at TerraPower had testified among Congress in a hearing where these new reactors are walk-away safe. Now, when I say thermal, it doesn't just stop there. The safest out of those key technological phenomena is there's this really cool guy named Lonnie Johnson. So this guy invented the super soaker.
Oh, the super soaker that I would know, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you were talking about that super. Okay, yeah. Good, Stephen.
He invented it from his flagship project, which is a thermo-electrochemical converter. So all that is taking hydrogen into a super soaker, right? Okay. Heating it up, creates pressure, pushes a turbine. And if my understanding is correct, that the hydrogen doesn't escape, right? It just continues to cycle as long as you're using superconducting. So you need some sort of thermal from there. That can get from solar panels. You can have a solar farm. Your heat and electricity is kind of generated from there. And then with a Johnson electrochemical converter, you have your electricity right there. And so again, it's a bunch of different things that we can use that. And again, so if you're looking at that example of the advanced nuclear reactors where they're using U-238, that by definition is renewable. If it's using spent fuel and it's just sitting there in Kentucky, it's not doing anything, and it has a lifespan of like another like 2,000 years. It's just sitting there not doing anything. So if you can build stuff with this, it's great. And it's even I couldn't stop there. You know what I mean? I kept on researching. So my flagship project is ICASST for short. So that comes out to, it's a mouthful, Infrastructure Conversion, Adaptation, and Symbiotic Stabilization System thereof. You see why I called it ICASST. So what does that mean? What is ICASST? Yeah, ICASST is basically everything I just said. So those key technological phenomena, the safe stuff, and mitigating climate change and making a ton of jobs. There's so many jobs. I wonder if we're going to have to hire and visa people that we kicked out. We're talking about the largest civil engineering project ever. And another key component of that is cars. I've come up with some ideas where I can take your 5-year-old car, convert it, actually pay you for it, and make it electric and have its range just as much as a full tank of gas.
Forgive me for interrupting. I just want to make sure I understand. Convert a gas car, to electric,
right?
And the cost?
I'm pretty sure I can pay you.
Now, again, I'm fascinated by you. So please, if I'm laughing, or forgive, some of the questions that might seem, overly simplistic, but how do you do that?
Okay, so
Again, I'm intrigued. Please understand, I'm intrigued. I'm fascinated. I'm not.
again, it kind of goes to that old thing, like where you want to look at your internal combustion car, and then you're like, okay, I want to make this electric, so I'm going to replace my engine block with a big battery,
Okay.
right, and an engine, and I'm going to put it there, and then it's going to that. What they found, through intellectual property, is in-wheel motors. So, and your transmission, your suspension, all that can be in each wheel hub. So your engine, drivetrain, all that, right? So you don't need a transmission; it's already in each wheel.
And
then your battery, of course, they've made recent. We've been waiting for advancements in battery tech, and that's where it even gets better because, again, when you're dealing with, we're starting to get into chemistry here when we're looking at stuff. You know what I mean?
Okay.
If you've ever watched, I just saw something on the History Channel with the men who made America, and it's your Vanderbilts and then your Rockefeller and all that stuff. That's like solid infrastructure, right? And they're Rockefeller basically found a way to refine crude oil, right? So beside the point, it's the same kind of thing where in our battery tech you can actually recycle carbon. Of course, everything's recyclable, right? So you can take carbon allotropes mixed in with your lithium, and that's your new battery. And again, when I'm saying like the only difference between an internal combustion car and these new smart car, well, converted, because again, that's a huge problem when it comes to climate change. We saw that during the beginning of the shutdown, right away, it's almost as if the Earth had cut back on smoking. It was noticed right away, and there's all kinds of data to effectuate that. So, all right, so you take your in-wheel motors. Let's say you take your 5-year-old Kia, right, into a gas station, and I pay you, let's say, $2,000 because I want your scrap metal. I want that engine block, right? There's a lot of iron in there that I could do all kinds of stuff. Again, intellectual property. You give me a few base elements, I want to make some cool stuff. So anyhow, with that, you put your in-wheel motors, and then you put your new battery in there. And then with by fusing carbon allotropes and lithium, your recharge is like you could charge that whole battery probably in about an hour, and that's going to give you a 300-mile range. Now, most gas tanks, it's about 300 miles, right? But to fill that tank takes you less than maybe 10 minutes. Yeah, about 10 minutes, right? So that's the one thing. If you're going to go on a road trip, you're going to want to just wait an hour. And if you're going on that long of a road trip, how many times do you stop for full tanks of gas? You know what I mean? Once or twice. So, if I'm going to Ocean City here in Maryland, I stop once, maybe, because it's about 250 miles away. So, right. And so that just gives you an hour, and people kind of have to get over that. They have to get over that instant gratification that we're so used to. That's kind of the psychology behind it.
Yeah, but we're very hung up on instant. Yeah.
But when you have 8 out of 10 Americans, regardless of who they support on the political spectrum, believe that climate change is real, then that should be a good thing. What most Americans don't know is that only 12% of Americans know that we're in a climate crisis. And if you join Citizens Climate Lobby, which is free, it's nonpartisan, and it's volunteer, you'll learn right away, real quick, like where we're at. Like the biggest climate change nerds are in there, and it's really cool. It's the largest climate advocacy group. So anyways, you can go there. It's Citizens Climate Lobby. Just Google it, and it shows right up. And they definitely need a lot of help in their diversity. They want to be able to diversify all the different demographics in there, because really what that's going to do is go back to all the mother countries. We're all immigrants here, right? So
sure.
And this is an international problem. This isn't an Arlington, Virginia problem, or DC problem. This is a worldwide thing. So anyhow, now
we joke about it here in Ohio. It snowed. We had snow coverage on Monday morning. People woke up to snow, had to clean their cars off. It's going to be 70 degrees in a couple of days.
Right.
Again, it's bizarre. I don't want to get into the whole climate crisis thing, but it's bizarre how the weather is different, and people like myself don't recall it being like that when we were younger.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself should concern people.
So with that, when people hear the terminology of climate change or global warming, really what the way that it behaves is through oscillation. And you just mentioned that, where you have one day 70, one day snow,
30
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And you're going to have that. It wouldn't be fair to say that we are in a early stage of the climate crisis, because there have been communities throughout the world that have been affected for decades. So for some reason, here in Northern Virginia, in the metropolitan area of DC, we had more 60-degree weather days last winter. It was like 20. And like I said, I was born and raised here, and my grandmother immigrated from Mexico in the 70s, and I talked to her about it. And you can see some of like her yard has just been affected by El Niño and stuff. So that's how and the best scientists in the world don't really know like how much time we have. And where you have a school of thought is that Earth will have its natural warming period from the offset of the last interglacial cycle, right? So the Earth has had 5 of those. But if you're looking at that, like we don't really know. Like, for instance, like within Earth, it being an egg and having a developmental cycle, it didn't just start having interglacial periods, ice ages,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
It started off. So whether human beings displaced CO2 into the atmosphere and the oceans and the soil, we may have not had another interglacial cycle. So now there's also scientifically irrefutable evidence that displacing CO2 into the climate will cause climate change. So put both of those two together, right? And that might explain why a lot of this stuff is happening quicker than scientists are expecting at the exponential rate. So again, we don't have a place. We could say, hey, look, there's a planet out there that has a Goldilocks zone, but we don't know the specifics of its water pluralities and all those different things that would make us understand interglacial cycles, heat cycles, things like that. You know, its distance from the star, the size of the star. But anyhow, so there's always solutions here. So going back to
back to the battery. Go ahead.
The cars is really the most fun, because we're talking about a lot of jobs. We're talking about bringing back, everyone wants, I don't care who you vote for, everyone wants jobs.
Yeah. It's not political. It's not a political, right. Sure. People want to be able to work. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
People want to be able to work.
Yeah.
Want to be able to do okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, when it comes, I don't know, I look at things as patterns. And if you look at 100 years ago with the Spanish flu, we had the Roaring 20s, right? Why not I try to be humble. So how about the Purring 20s? What if it took us how long to build a railroad network? Not long. It's like, I think we actually dismantled an entire one and replaced it in the Roaring 20s. And it took 10 years. You know what I mean? So we're talking about smart roads too. So when you look at
explain it, smart roads.
Okay, so Tesla walls are actually a bit obsolete. I support. I don't want to start promoting other companies here, but that's basically wired tech. You know what I mean? So okay, later smartphones can charge wirelessly on a pad, right? That's called electromagnetic induction. That phenomena is over 200 years old. So what you can do is you add a component in there and embed at certain places in roads, at the grocery store, at parking spots, where your car just sits over it.
I see.
And it charges wirelessly. Yeah. And this could also be used for heavy industry and trucks. It's all on my website for the most part. And again, when you're talking about 5 different components and bringing them together at the right places at the right time, all over the place. It's easy for me to say it's easy. I saw because I know how to do it. I've been sitting here, researching it my whole life with that flagship program. So again, now there is one other element that's very important when it comes to recharge, because so much of the infrastructure is not going to change. You're not going to really see much. For instance, like every gas station is going to stay there. They're just going to they're going to maintain their position as mechanics shops and also auto body too. So when you come in there with a converted electrical vehicle and you want to charge it, for instance, if I use the example of Virginia, we're like I just bought a scooter, electric scooter, right? So if I charge that thing, I know that I'm really only being 41% zero carbon emissions. You know what I mean? It's not coming from renewable, because that's an older reactor that it's coming the energy, but it's not mostly coal. It's not. I'm not putting gas into it, and there's no catalytic converter, all that stuff. So now that's the challenge. So if everyone charges their converted vehicles or just all electric vehicles, and they're charging them at gas stations, like where if they take Virginia as a template, and existing as it is today, there's still some coal being burned. That's why it's so important that you have things like Lonnie Johnson's tech. His is the cleanest by far that I've seen. And if you want to say cleanest, really, if you look into it, these advanced reactors, the way to classify those is fourth generation. That's a traveling wave reactor. The ones in Virginia, that's like first, second generation.
Okay.
And those things were designed with slide rules. They didn't use supercomputing. They weren't able to effectuate everything, all the different moving parts. Things like basically your biggest problem with those, your two biggest problems with the older reactors is, of course, U-235 is highly toxic, right? It's radioactive. I mean, everything, gold is radioactive. There's, allotropes within that are used in some form of cancer treatment. You know what I mean? So, super expensive. So again, when you go back to understanding the technology is really what I would most want from people, is to really go out there and understand and hopefully trust some of the stuff that's out there. When you got a guy like Bill Gates, who is maybe questionably a bit Weasley with Microsoft, and through his little endeavors, but then what he's doing with the Gates Foundation, him and his wife, it's remarkable. What they're doing out in Africa and all this stuff. It's really cool what they're doing. So again, it's really coming down to that, where we don't really have any other options. I wish that solar panels would be the end all solution, but you have to also remember, it's not always sunny in Virginia or Philadelphia.
But how does this happen? How you're launching? Explain to us.
Okay, so that's the next part. So. Well, I don't believe that government can solve all our problems. I know that they give us incentives, and this is, where I've maybe only got 2 or 3 hours of sleep last night. What happens in this election will determine how easier it is for me to get people jobs, to be quite honest with you. If when I see the president get on television and he tells Philadelphia, he doesn't know, what do you do if you take away fossil fuel? Well, I'm watching this. I'm like, you just approved $10 million for the advancement of nuclear technology 2 years ago, and you're not telling the world. Because to be quite honest, I think he doesn't have the professional demeanor to present it to the world, and like I am, and with facts, with data, and to be like, this is how we're going to do it. Now, when you say on the left, Biden going kind of back and forth with fracking, I don't. When Hillary said that, I didn't support him. Like, no, you can't frack. Again, if you go on my website, you can see a chart that's updated monthly from the Department of Energy.
Tell us about the website. I'm sorry. Tell us the website.
So that's Land Industries Incorporated. That's www.aincUSA.com. So for Land Industries Incorporated, aincUSA.com. And what you have there is basically me displaying my flagship ICASST and a few other things. The business method's really cool. But anyway, I'm kind of going all over the place. And that's kind of the thing about it. Again, when you've got 5 or different technological components that need to come together. You need to be able to recharge your converted electric car or all electric car. Where is that energy coming from? Is that coming from coal, or is it coming from safe thermal? I mean, if you want to think about it, you could say solar is a form of thermal, right? It's absorbing, and that's tends to be, I guess, the most natural thing that we have in the universe, where we have a heat source like the sun, and then it pretty much powers everything else. So, and it doesn't stop there. Within 15 years during this pandemic, I've seen a lot of companies start to push things, forward for what really matters. You've got the Koch brothers, Koch Industries being like, hey, we need to look at sustainable commerce. You've got Exxon talking about CO2 sequestration.
Yeah, you've got a lot of people thinking differently because of the pandemic.
Right. So I don't really, I professionally don't need the government's help to bring management and project intellectual property to a town anywhere, small or large, and then also need something like HR 109, which is the new green climate deal or whatever, HR 10, and then to be able to pay my people well. I don't need that. I'm going to pay them well anyways. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be probably making so much money off of this that if even just taking 1/10% of it's I'm not about extreme capitalism at all. I think.
But where's the investment come? Forgive me. Where's the investment? How does it get rolling, if you will? I'm sorry.
That's where I am today.
Okay.
So I just need to be, again, I'll go it alone if I have to. I started a Landistry 10 years ago, and it's just my LLC where I house my intellectual property. ICASST is one of them. I signed 90% of that to a Landistries Incorporated, which I started in February, right? And I was like, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go out there. I'm in the perfect place to attract people, and then boom, 2 weeks later, shut down. You know what I mean? I had to go and get a PPP letter because I can't talk to people face to face because or get out there at all. There's a lot of tourism that comes here, and just give out business cards, whatever it is I need to do, make connections that way. So that's again why I was able to canvas your show and just kind of spread out and to be able to be like, this is what we're doing. So now that
just give me a couple of seconds. If you can stay with me, right? You're good time wise.
Yeah.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Louie Be Free Radio Show, BrainFood from the Heartland, copyright Be Free Radio Limited, 2020, produced by the lovely Ms. Moneyface in cooperation with White Rabbit Productions, my very special guest, Stephen Leon. So let's just keep rolling. Again, funding, the questions that I'm looking at, people are, how does it get kicked off? Investors, explain. You touched on government a little bit. Tell us.
Well, I'll tell you what. As I mentioned before, government can make it easier or harder for me, and I don't equate a monetary value to that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't charge my plant money for feeding the water. But when you have California, when Newsom signs an executive order saying this is what we want and this is how we're going to do it, that's huge for the private sector. That's going to give us a tremendous amount of incentives. Just like with the subprime stuff, I don't want to get into that, but the idea behind that was to increase the dollar by having people be homeowners, right? So beside the point, and we want to watch out for bubbles and all that thing. So when I say that I don't need the government's help, or it'll make it easier or harder for me, it's just that. Like, if the government were to give me a grant, and where they're like, okay, we like what you're doing, here's all the governors, talk to them, plan it out, every city planner, and then start bringing in, all the different tech that you're talking about. And it's not my tech. I'm just piecing things together into a system, right? And because we don't have time. My best guess is if we don't start taking actions this decade, and when I say that, I mean, I put it on my website, we need to start by 2022. We need to start, or we're starting by 2022 with the ICASST system we'll see the least suffering with that. If we wait any longer, then we're going to see unfortunate circumstances like we've seen in California and those wildfires. And my one of my biggest fears is a fire hurricane. Now that's crazy. Okay, but you have fire tornadoes, or just a super massive hurricane that goes, it doesn't veer off to the right or left. It's just going to go right up the Gulf, right in the middle, as if it was a giant tornado and just dissipated. And then I don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. There's too many unknowns, right?
Right. So, yeah. So I don't, again, let's say it doesn't matter who wins the election. And I go, and I just call the governors myself. I met Don Baer I'm right here. You know what I mean? Like I met Don Baer just before. He's my congressman here in the 8th District of Virginia. And, it's just a public venue. Just walk right in. So I'll keep doing that if I have to. If I have to knock literally on the doors of everyone in Congress until I'm heard, because no one's helping me, then that's fine. Now, when it comes to investing, private investing, that's something neat also. On my website, there's a business method. And that kind of details some of the cool things where, again, if I go into a city or a town or municipality, whatever it is, I'm not bringing a Landistries Incorporated technology. It's not it's everybody else's, and it's creating. I'm just conglomerating. That's all I'm doing. I'm bringing everybody together at the table, from the workforce to the inventors to the companies that manufacture and produce this stuff, and bringing it all to the table and be like, hey, don't go. You can't go incredibly fast at one that would create an economic, bubble. But it also, again, I don't want you to start pushing out all these machines, and again, in that infrastructure that relies 64% of its energy on fossil fuels. So you have to be careful with how you're putting that in there. And another thing about my company is that, and I'll say it now, I'm a moderate capitalist. I believe if I'm going to sell you something, I'm not going to sell it with a bunch of extra demoralization. If I sell you a car, there's not going to be some supermodel on there. I'm just not going to do it. What does that have to do with selling cars, really? So, and you can justify that all you want, but I think that the extreme capitalism that we've seen, like every single product just sold to us for profits over morals. You know what I mean? Like that's something Landistries is not going to do. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's a lot of, again, I love talking about it,
and it's a lot to put together. But so what the next step for you is what, Stephen?
So, next step for me is I'm going to wait to see who wins this election, and I'm going to act accordingly. So,
explain that.
All right. So let's say if Biden wins, then I'm going to go through my congressman and be able to. Because last time I met my congressman, the first thing he said is that we have a president that doesn't believe in climate change. And then.
But forgive me for interrupting, but does believe in jobs. Does want jobs, right? So. Again, I almost hate to say, do you have to believe in climate change to want this to work? When you're talking about all the jobs created, that in and of itself should intrigue anyone, regardless of their politics. Correct? Yeah. Right?
People can be forgiven and things like that. However, that's what makes ICASST so neat, because the way that I see it is, let's say there was no problem. Let's say we lived in an atmosphere where it actually benefited the environment, where we see CO2 displacement. Let's and CO2 actually does. It helps plants, but not too much in the type of the plurality that it is. But so ICASST can go to Mars. Imagine if all the different 5 technological phenomena that are outlined with the solar, thermal, hydrogen, and thermal, put in a stamp and just stamped it right on Mars. Right. The logistics of getting there and putting it all together is not that much different than it is going to be on Earth. So again, like I don't need a climate change in Mars, or Pluto is pretty cold, or anywhere else, or even on an asteroid. You know what I mean? I can just put this there, and all the different tech. I'm already promoting. There's these space camps for children, to be asteroid miners. That's a joke. Asteroid
miners. I get it. I saw the picture on your Instagram with the little asteroid miner, the little Lego. Yeah.
I ripped that from that movie about Star Trek parody or something.
Well,
anyway,
the Galaxy Quest. That's a favorite of mine. Not miners. I love that. What a great concept. Well, forgive me for going off on that, but I just, yeah.
So
We'll do that. Remember the line, we'll do that. We'll, like what you're saying, we'll do that. Okay. Go ahead, Stephen. I'm sorry.
brilliant sphere. We only have fun. So whether you're on the belief that Earth has its natural warming cycle, or on the belief that it's because of CO2 displacement from our machines, from our economy that's taken us thus far, then it doesn't matter. It renders it moot. I'm
going to add. Forgive me. This is very personal. The animal agriculture issue also.
Yep.
The issue with factory farming, etc., which has got to go also. But go ahead. Forgive me. Go ahead.
No, agriculture. I've thought about every single possible variable and then left open the possibility for change with this thing. How does it affect all systems? Even creating up things. What if I don't want this to happen again? What if we find down the road that in our manufacturing process of making a wind turbine or solar panel has something to do with affecting this or that over there? You know what I mean? We saw how primitive the supply chains were in fossil fuels during the pandemic. They kept churning out the oil. We didn't need to use it all. So they're actually paying landowners to hold on to this stuff, for us. And then right at that same time, you've got the president of the company with safe thermal electricity telling the world that these are walk-away safe. When you think about how if something overpressurizes and explodes and spreads radioactive material, by the way, and I will say that U-238 is no more volatile than lead. Still volatile, but it's not as volatile as something you would put in a warhead, U-235. Right? You don't have just U-238 alone. And anyhow, so we saw how primitive our supply chains and reliance is on oil itself, and just that again, when all of a sudden something like this happens, oh no, what is it? So when it comes to agriculture, I heard Trump's son-in-law said, and this is widely known, he's like, look, if you want to have the younger vote in the Conservative Party, you're going to have to address climate change in some form. And they came up with that trillion trees thing. I like palm trees. I'll tell you, palm trees are very sustainable. Certain species of them don't require very much water in a changing climate. Like you can create, or not, again, where it's moot. You know what I mean? Like if you have a community that has a water shortage because of the oscillation patterns in climate change, convert your oil pipeline into a water pipeline and have it be pumped through a safe, advanced nuclear reactor. That I would rather have my pets living by a safe nuclear advanced reactor than a coal. And the math is there too. It's 80,000 people get sick or die from coal a year just by working with it. You're not going to get that at all with advanced nuclear. I mean, if you put away I hate thinking about the weapons, but just the whole energy side of advanced nuclear energy, you don't even get close. It's less than 10,000 its entire span, and then also it helps denuclearize. There's so many win-wins.
Let me ask you about if Biden wins. So regardless, you'll go to your Congress.
So the left,
correct?
Better plan. When Obama was president, he set a lot of money aside that when the technology caught up, that we could start to really mitigate this thing through the private sector. The government, when you look at your jets and things like that, those aren't made by they're not manufactured by the government. They bid that out to companies like General Dynamics or Raytheon or Booz Allen. You know what I mean? They go to the private sector with that stuff. So that's why I really like Tom Steyer. He was the first presidential candidate to put climate change on as his top priority, as his number one thing. And I understood that. I was like, wow, somebody gets it. Right? So anyhow, then when you have, their plan is far more robust. And they also understand that this is about workforce. This is about jobs and things like that. So,
but what if government doesn't embrace it?
Well,
again, and I don't want to be, I'm not being negative. I'm just, I'm sure you've looked at this. Okay. Obviously you want government to embrace it. If not, then what?
This is highly psychological, right? Because both sides of the table, the entire spectrum, everybody wants infrastructure upgrades. We're the only industrialized, or excuse me, developed country in the world to not have a mono train, or again, electromagnetic induction train. We don't have that speed because we have a huge infrastructure. We didn't get 4G until we're like the last to get it because we have such a high area. So we both want this thing. You know what I mean? When you hear a politician on the right talk about, or maybe working off last year's campaign funding or whatever from fossil fuel, those same companies that have funded them are already making moves to diversify their energy resourcing. So especially when it comes to carbon, you sequester a lot of this carbon. It can be reused for all sorts of other sustainable products, such as fleece. That's a petrochemical that comes from fossil fuels, all of it. Your plastic bottles, sustainable. So a lot of industry needs to change, and I support it. It's a lot of jobs, and again, I don't need the left or the right. I don't need a Green New Deal or anyone telling me how I'm going to subcontract this stuff. I'm going to put this stuff on the table and like, look, you need to make sure that these people's families are taken care of. I don't care if I take a pay cut. I don't care. Like I said, with what we're talking about, you can give me a fraction of a penny and I'll be just fine. Right. So, and that's cool. I'm not going to extreme capitalize off of that because it's associated with a patent that I have that is pending. You know, I hate that. That's like coming up with the cure for HIV and then making it to only the rich. I hate that.
Right. Yeah.
I hate that. You know, that's extreme capitalism. But moderate capitalism is not like that. And so again, it comes to me where I'm not going to be dependent on. I'm mostly dependent on workers. I'm dependent on inventors. If this is private sector, you know, this is where America is awesome. Like, they can't tell me what to do, what not to. And I don't need environmental policy because I'm already going to accord to it. I don't need, just because something's not a law doesn't mean I'm not going to do the right thing. You know what I mean? And
I agree. Shouldn't have to legislate to be morally upper.
Yeah, that's what's cool about the Citizens Climate Lab. You will go in there and you'll be wowed that you'll see somebody from just your garden variety, your stereotypical Texan, or your stereotypical person from coal country, you know, who's in this lobby saying, this is the information we have, this is our way of life, but we know that, and you can kind of tell who they're going to vote for, right? Or who they're used to voting for. And I don't know. It's just, you live in DC long enough, you can kind of tell. Anyways,
I'm sure.
Maybe not. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just there's a whole psychology about that too.
Yes, I know. When I was in line yesterday voting, you know, you're looking around and thinking, was that, you know, it was a long line when I went, and you're thinking, just wondering how people are going to vote, just kind of pass the time.
Yeah,
and in DC, I'm sure even more so.
Well, Northern Virginia, you know, we voted very, very much blue. And which is, you know, I don't know how much that's saying with people that live and work in this area and they see what's going on. You know, like how do we vote? And we're Arlington especially, man, like 82% Democrat. And I don't care about color, to be quite honest with you. I really don't. I don't think that all my beliefs can be determined. And that's not even about it. I don't even want to get into it, to be honest with you. I don't know. But
into the politics.
So I'm looking when I look.
Go ahead. No. Finish what you're going to say, Steve.
I just care about people's needs and wants.
So where does that come from in you? You care about people's needs and wants. Don't want to overcapitalize on things. Where do you think that comes from?
I'm going to say my grandmother.
It's interesting because you mentioned your grandmother before, and
I did.
You did, yeah.
My maternal grandmother. Wow. My grandmother is 82 now, and looking back on it, you know, she's had some health problems, but you look back on it with the 5 kids that she brought here and the 3 grandchildren they would spawn, and then 4 great-grandchildren, and what she's accomplished through her will and her faith. And looking back on it, how she didn't impede free will. We were wild. I'm 39 this year. I've been wild. But through all that, my uncles too. So all through that, you know, she didn't impede free will. And whenever I would try, if I made a move and I thought I was some sort of extreme capitalist Chad or something like that, I would go to my grandma. She wouldn't just emotionally acknowledge that it was anything of value. And I didn't get that. And I would try to get resentful of her. I'm making moves and shit. And just again, but even then, wasted no time lecturing me or none of that. It's what a special bird. It took some time to realize that environment. I think I came up with a formula to understand a person. It really comes down to three components: genetics, environment, choice. Mm-hmm. Now, genetics are, that's nothing. 99.9% the same. We're all the same. Environment and then choice. Some people's choice is the absolute one. It's either you do or not, right?
Yeah.
Some people's environment are so dysfunctional or functional or anywhere in between. For their ability to make a choice to better themselves or do the next right thing or not, or anything in between that, starts to get affected. Again, genetics aside, there have been, it doesn't matter with that kind of stuff, but and then when I look back on my genetics, my environment, my choice, I can't help but look, wow, if my grandmother hadn't done this, then I would not be in the position that I am today.
I appreciate that. So again, people can go to your website. We've got links up at louisfreeshow.com and wfmj.com, AINCUSA.com. And to help move things, I mean, I know your plan is to go through your congressman to enact this. What else? Not that you haven't done enough. Forgive me. That doesn't sound like. So what else? So what else do you work on? It's brilliant.
Thank you. The most important thing is community awareness. Really talk to your neighbors about what we're. I wish, again, only 12%, it's 12 or 18% of Americans know that we're in a climate crisis. Again, a lot of this is science tech. I don't know if to me it's obvious. I don't know. But it's a pretty big deal. And if you're worried about jobs, and if you're worried, I think this can
I think everybody's worried about jobs, Stephen. I think everybody would like to see good paying, decent jobs. And we see, go ahead.
And whatever your ideological differences are, you go to work, you're able to put that stuff away and unify in some way. And if you can do that through work and mitigating climate change, and then bettering your community and your children's future and your children's future, then I look at ICASST and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. But again, the most important thing, politicians are going to listen to us. So if you look at take some time and really understand where your products are coming from. I hate to say this, beef. It's like, I think Leonardo DiCaprio did a documentary. It's like the worst form of agriculture. There are all these, of course, there's charts.
Well, now you're talking my stuff, because I stopped eating flesh literally 50 years ago this past May, and I've been vegan for the last 20 some years. So, and I see, and forgive me for ranting on this minute, it's sad that I have to look to the British press and international press to find information about this. The United States media has pretty much blocked it out, major media. Yet if you go to the Guardian or the Telegraph or the Independent, and you see all these different studies, and I certainly agree with you. That's the one thing everybody can do and do now.
Again, there's food tech. I saw a patent for. Really, I'm serious, and it's safe stuff too. I understand the dangers of any form of even partially hydrogenated fat. What that can do to a system and inflammation and things like that. So, and the people that are inventing these things know that too. So, I'm not talking about making a burger that tastes like a burger or who knows. Yeah. But the advancements in that, again, it's all intellectual property, and the new food, how it's going to be sustainable, whether you have celiac or not. I really see the next 10 years being a huge revolution across the whole board. and yeah, it's very distracting. And
Again, the things with the cellular-based meat and the products. Again, I'm thrilled when people will choose an Impossible Burger or Beyond Burger. When I see Burger King selling them, when I see the stores, I see the change coming. There's Liz Marshall was on with me a few weeks back. She did a new film called Meat the Future, MEAT the Future, about this. Now, I'm not going to eat cellular-based meat. That's not for me. But it stops the animal agriculture and the cruelty and the environmental impact. So, I think that's great, and all the different things that are happening, which are being so well received. But you're right, the technology just blows my mind.
We have no choice, too, because the math will show us that the Earth cannot sustain every human being to eat meat from animals the way we're accustomed to by 2035.
And I love that things are happening and happening so quickly.
It has to. That's what I mean. You can see things like on an election and just be depleted and jaded out and lose all your faith in everything. But that's why I think companies like mine. Again, there's a business method I have where it's in the provisional patent process. But I eliminate an executive bureaucracy. Why do I need them telling me what I can build and what I can't? All my shareholders.
Yeah.
Land Industries is a B Corp, so by designation, I have to benefit society and the environment. So I'm not going to make a new pillowcase unless it helps you with your ear infection. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So looking for investor. I mean, where to now? Again, you talked a little bit about the government path, and if in addition to that, I should not say if that doesn't work. I don't. I want to be positive about things, but in addition to that, what's next for you?
So, definitely bringing in shareholders where not only do they just have a voice, it's not profit over and not being held accountable to environmental or labor laws or the lack thereof. It's really like being involved in your share and how many shares, and even being able to subdivide some of those shares into an IPO, but not entirely, where we still preserve autonomy and we get to decide who we want to bring to the table, license their intellectual property, and then just have it built. You'll never even know we were there. We're that little fine print. We're that good little fine print that just brought everything together. And like 3M's like that. I had a discussion with them recently on really hoping to advance some of their stuff. In space. They started off as a mineral mining company, a failed one, but they're to build an N95 mask. It takes very specialized equipment to make things that tiny, and they've got it. So, yeah, definitely. Hopefully, I can partner with 3M. I met with one of their senior R&D people over there. That's also that meeting is on my website. The little presentation. It's like 3 or 4 pages.
Yeah. Again, that's AINCUSA.com, and of course, those links are up. Well, I am absolutely fascinated by you. You're a fascinating guy, and your grandmother's got to be an amazing lady. I'm really glad that you shared that. Seriously.
Yeah. I do want to mention one more thing about
go ahead.
About shareholders. So it's just like anything else. It's going to be risk, but when I'm talking about the type of stuff, it's a very much a long-term investment. If you come in, and I'm talking about mitigating climate change and increasing your investment to the stars, like literally asteroid mining, procuring iron and stuff like that from asteroids. Of course, I want to work with SpaceX and NASA, but I don't need them. You know what I mean? Like NASA's going to shoot us a bunch of information about asteroid 16 Psyche, which is one of the largest asteroids in our sun solar system, and it's worth 10,000 quintillion U.S. dollars, which is 18 zeros. I was psyched. I actually went to the UN when I have a petition on there. I was like, why doesn't the UN commoditize some of this early on? Because we have enough instrumentation.
You have that in the PDF that you've got online. Because I'm looking at that number and I thought, I didn't know if I'm looking at all those zeros and trying to figure it out. Of course, you wrote what it was, but it was like, wow. It blew my mind.
Some economists are saying that that could crash the entire market. You bring that much iron. We don't need to bring that iron here. We have enough here. We were going to make space infrastructure with that stuff. As long as the math pans out, you can't just. It might have its own gravity. You got to be very, very careful. Make sure you're doing what you're doing. I do not support mining the moon. That's a ridiculous thing. It's, you know, you want to leave, even though it has H3 and uranium, precious uranium. I just leave that alone. Leave the moon alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not worth the risk. It's going to go. But anyway, so this petition I started back in like February, March, hasn't gotten that many signatures. But it's like, you know, why doesn't the UN and the World Bank come together and at least commoditize a percentage of what this, I don't know, that gets tricky. Like, how does that affect all the different currencies that are out there? You know, so, and, you know, but I'm sure it can be done. But again, sometimes it is challenging in this very loud world that we live in, to have a voice and to be known. And that's, again, why I'm on your show today.
And so looking for investors.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised that I'm not going to disclose publicly right now how much, you know, my stock is worth presently, but with that investment, I mean, it's astronomical. I mean, it could come back times 100 over 10 years. Let's say a share was worth $1,000, right? And if you really look at this from an economical perspective, where you understand that if fossil fuel, it's a commodity, right? Let's say fossil fuel, this is true. If it comes from the you know, deceased living things with geological pressure, and it gets into layers of the earth, right? And that comes from life, plants, things like that. This is the only, you know, planet in the solar system that has life on it, or so we think. You know, I mean, there's probably some water, some carbon out there on Mars and things like that, but as much as an abundance. So when you have the most abundance of fossil fuels here on Earth amongst the rest of the solar system, and looking at that, you know, from an economical standpoint, the value of oil is pretty high, and why it's being sold so cheap is pretty ridiculous too. But when you think of things like gold, there's a lot of gold out there in asteroids. So that the change of gold, the value of gold is going to drop because there's going to be more of it. Now, where it comes from and all that stuff, platinum, things like that too. Again, iron, it all has a monetary value associated to it. So when I'm talking about procuring organic materials such as uranium, or if it's silicone for your solar panels or whatever it is, and then getting in the middle wherever I can, and then also bringing that stuff, all that tech that we learn about here, taking it out to space and getting all the logistics down for all the right reasons, you're looking at a pretty reasonable long-term investment. And of course, that's going to come with risk. For me, I'm in it for the long haul. You know, this is really fun stuff. It's got really good causes. There's no way for me to escape with some sneaky, you know, duffel bag of cash. I've written myself out in many ways to work just as proof that, look, this is something that we can do, and hopefully, you know,
hopefully,
leadership
for all of us.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I want to stay in touch with you. You're a fascinating guy. You really are.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the education. I told you before, you know, I need you to explain these things because, again, you know, the concepts are new for most of us. And it makes sense to me when you're talking about the charging the cars. I just want to get back to that for a minute. If you're in a parking spot, why not have that while you're in the grocery store or wherever you are, at an appointment or at work, have that, you know, charging from below. It's fascinating.
Right, and that's where the government does help, where they're going to give you incentives to that, because any reasonable government knows that if you're going to it's not good business to know that what you're doing may very well allow you to not have an economy for the same, you know, polarization of I don't, you know, you want to call it willful ignorance or whatever, but, you know, yeah, it just makes perfect sense to me. You know, if I'm anything in my home, if I realize, hey, there's something there out of place that might be affecting my ability to survive, I need to mitigate it appropriately.
Mitigate it, yeah. Absolutely. AINCSA.com. Stephen Leon, let's stay in touch, please. Let's do this again.
Thanks so much, Louie.
Keep me posted. I've really enjoyed it. You're an interesting guy. Say hi to your grandmother for me.
Will do.
Got to be a special, very, very special lady.